This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everybody, it's Aaron Norris over at the Norris Group, and today we are here with longtime real estate investor Kristi Cirtwill. She started in Toronto, but made her way to Long Beach, California back in 2007, the perfect time to become a full-time real estate investor. And since 2008, she's purchased over 250 homes, and her specialty happens to be hoarder homes. So today we're going to talk about everything from ADUs to SB9 to hoarder homes. She currently flips tons of projects. She's doing ADUs, some really interesting things in like lot splits, and in her spare time she endures outdoor activities, playing her guitar, and of course good food and wine. Who doesn't? And everybody wants to know, do you still have the 1979 Volkswagen bus?
Good memory. Yes, I do.
Are you rocking it?
She's a lot of work. She's a lot of work. Let's just say that.
I can only imagine. Well, let me set the stage with a few things that I think real estate investors should know. I've been presenting on ADUs now for, I think, 3 years, and then SB9 for the last year. I think there's some really cool opportunity. We're getting close. I think SB9 is going to follow ADU and make it more investor friendly. But the National Association of Home Builders came out and showed that new construction nationwide on an average build of around $400,000, $100,000, almost $93,870 to be exact, goes towards things like government and impact fees, which is crazy. So you wonder why here in California, with the starting price of land, what's a half an acre going for these days in LA, Kristi?
Oh gosh, yeah. Who knows? I've seen it anywhere from 400,000 upwards.
Right. So before you even construct anything, sticks and bricks, you're already looking at, $400,000 to $500,000 just in governmental fees and land costs, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. So the state has just released within the last year its new RHNA numbers, which stands for Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And the one reason that cities and counties might work with you is because they are really adding teeth to these rules, that if these cities and jurisdictions do not meet their goals in the next 8 years or so, they're going to start taking away specific funding like CDBG funds. So cities they've got to figure it out. And I'll give you an example. Orange County has to build 183,000 through October 2029. It's crazy. And the few planning people I know, they're like, it's insane. Like, we would have to replicate the best years ever every year leading up to that. So it's just really, really interesting to see this in the play. And then you can look, if you think the government's doing a good job, my favorite go-to is to watch the HHH fund. That got passed in 2016, where the citizens of LA, you are paying $1.2 billion so the government could supposedly create 10,000 affordable units. And as October of 2021, there was only 1,000 of those available and an average price of $579,000 per unit. I love it when Sean says it's the best. Californians spend more money on unaffordable housing than anywhere else.
Yes.
So imagine if they would have taken that $1.2 billion, given it to investors to do ADUs. How crazy. Well, let's start at the beginning. When you have a conversation with about an ADU, how do you describe it to the layperson?
Well, I guess a better term is just saying a back house.
Yeah.
A house in the rear of your property that is an additional living space for somebody, either an extended family member or, a renter to help you out with the mortgage payment.
And there's also something called a junior accessory dwelling unit, which is just a converted garage, right? Pretty much.
Yeah. So it has to be converted existing space. So if your garage is attached, generally they'll let you convert that and call it a junior ADU. But when you start getting into junior ADUs, you have to live in one of the units. You have to live on the property. Technically.
Yeah. She's all technically wink.
Well, you know what? I actually talked to a planner of a city last week, and he's like, yeah, I mean, you should intend, the key word being intend, but there's no way that they have to enforce it.
I was going to say, who is enforcing it? Well, I think the place where investors are going to run amok are neighbors. Neighbors are truly freaking out. If you, let's real quick, because it comes up, triplexizing. Can you describe that?
Sure. Well, I'll back up. And when I first started building ADUs in 2018, back then you were supposed to live in either the main house or the ADU. Well, I didn't know that rule, and I was building 5 at the same time. And I started getting all these letters halfway through construction saying, well, by the way, you have to sign and notarize and record this document saying you're going to live in one of them. Well, anyway, they did away with that rule. So you can actually be building an ADU on a rental property now and have both units rented. But now, as you know, with SB 9, you can technically have up to 4 units on an R1 zone property. Now, does it always make sense to do that?
Now, I read the law, and it says that you can split the lot, but the city does not have to allow you to build an ADU. So that's going to be very city specific. Have you already talked to certain cities and they're cool with it? Like, yeah, split the lot and build ADUs. We'd love that.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, 2 different planners, Long Beach and Lakewood, I've talked to both, and they're pretty open about it.
That's
Some
great.
cities don't really have, I mean, it's just like when ADUs were first passed, the cities are like, what is this? So you kind of just default to the state. So I'm sure as the months go on, each city will develop their own plans or set of rules. But as of right now, most of them are just defaulting to what state put in place, which is technically, it doesn't matter what size there's some discretion you have to use there, but you can technically split a lot, or you don't even need to split it. You can have main house, then what they're calling a second unit, a second house, and then ADU, and then JDU. So that's 4 units.
Yeah,
That's
okay, I see
4
what you're doing.
units on one single. It has to be zoned R1 to do that.
Interesting. So if you could technically, if they got really fancy, you could do a lot split and do 3 units on each property.
If it would fit.
That cramlord, the idea of design being really important. You don't want to create a piece of junk that people don't want to live in, or where it takes an hour to park. I mean, I think investors, we really have to learn to play nice, and we're going to be our own worst enemy when it comes to this. I think cities and counties are going to want to work with us. I've been on housing commissions and not having the conversation about, you're never going to do this on your own. You need investors to come to the table, because right now SB 9 was really written with the homeowner in mind. But how many homeowners can stomach the construction process in today's market? I mean, it's not easy. If they've never done construction before, with the supply chain disruption, I mean, we're having to order appliances 10 months before we need them in Florida. It's just such a difficult process, and price increases. I think this is going to be the year we see a lot of wage increases in construction, and that's not a fun surprise. When you're building, you're like, sorry, it's going to cost 10 grand more. I just don't think the average homeowner is prepared for that. So and I don't think lending has caught up just yet. It's a very new process. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk more about all of that. But how has been the ADU process? You were one of the very first investors who really dove into it. I guess let's start there. Why did you think this was such a great idea?
I sometimes jump into things with both feet, and that could be a good thing and a bad thing. I sort of felt like I paved the way in some cities, but on the other hand, it was just really tough in the beginning. You had to have minimum lot square footage. Like I remember one city wanted 7,200 square foot lot sizes, and now it can be anything really. But I got a bunch done, and it was a matter of seeing all these awesome houses that I just kept flipping. And there's nothing wrong with flipping, because that's really brought me a lot of great money over the years. But you see these just boring 3-bed 2-bath 1,400 square foot house that it would be the perfect rental, and not really having a way to rent it, because for what you would pay, it just didn't pencil. But now with the loans the way they are, pretty much any of these houses, if you can get a regular conventional loan, which I can still get a couple more, the rents off that property will cover PITI. Then you build an ADU. I'm still building a couple, and I have figured out a little bit of a niche. So these are all in South LA County, North Orange County. And if I furnish them, I get not only a higher rent, but a better quality tenant. And I'm renting them on average for 5 to 6 months. So there are people coming to town for contract work or whatever. They need a landing place. And so I'm getting way more in rent and just a better quality person for that unit. A little bit more turnover, but I'm sort of doing a bit of both there. So if you're getting like literally for a studio size, I can get $19.50 in rent for a furnished unit. So
Wow.
and so let's say that's a garage conversion. That's going to cost less than $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
You're making almost $2,000. So that is your cash flow.
And it's not like an Airbnb where you're dealing with weekly turnover and all of that. And
No,
I think
and they don't let you do Airbnb or the short term, the less than 30 days usually on the ADUs.
Yeah, in the last 7 days, I've seen 2 cities nationwide that locked that down even further. And I think investors should expect that nationwide, as we have, unfortunately, California's affordable housing problem because of COVID has now spread everywhere.
Mhm.
So a lot of them are like, okay, we need to put the kibosh on rentals 30 days or less. Oddly enough, yesterday was the very first day I have launched my first 30+ day rental. And I'm shocked. I thought on a good day, I left it furnished. I thought on a good day I'd get $3,000. This is eventually going to go for $5,000 a month. This was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo, 1,500 square feet. I'm laughing. I'm like, what? This is a $60,000 a year property? That's nuts.
Oh yeah.
And then again, targeting a few different things. So what you said, contract, executive rental, people in contracts coming out for an extended period of time where your option is a lot less than staying in a hotel or an extended stay. You've got traveling nurses, which are really popular, graduate students who are traveling, need to be in town for a while. So it's a great option. I'm excited. We'll see. I'm also working with Patrick Diamond for the first time, and you met him when we did the 80. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he cracks me up because he's all about the experience. So he stayed there, and oh my gosh, he's so funny. He's like, I envision the back bedroom with a desk overlooking the mountains. You're gonna have to show me the data on that one. I'm not getting rid of a bed with a desk. But
you have to know your target person for that property. And if you can figure what that is, and consider outdoor space even with these. I mean, people want that, especially over the last couple of years. You know, they want somewhere to go outside and sit. So I always try to incorporate a private space for the ADU. You know, even if it's a studio size, you've got to have some space designated. They don't want to be crammed in a 350 square foot place all the time. So have some outdoor space allocated for that too.
Do you typically, this is a question I really don't know the answer to, because the way that you do these, do you renovate the front house, rent it out, and then focus on the ADU building?
The last couple that I'm doing, yeah, that's what I've done. So as a matter of fact, I just did that. I just renovated the main house and rented it out, and like 2,500 views on Zillow and like 27 applications or some ridiculous thing. So, and I thought I was pushing the rent on that. But I told them right from the start, and I wanted to make sure I picked somebody. I said, you're not going to have a garage. I will buy you an 8x10 storage shed for the backyard. So I got all that set up so they have somewhere to put their storage. But they know that the garage is not part of what they're renting.
Did it impact rents at all? What you ended up getting for rent, and you didn't have anybody blame?
It didn't. I would say it didn't impact the rent at all.
Didn't impact the quality of tenant for you?
No. Great.
That's good to know. One of the reasons I asked is that is one of the biggest, a city asked me to teach this because they were getting some feedback from some very knowledgeable NIMBYs who were saying, number one, the utilities couldn't handle the bandwidth, the sewer in particular. I'm like, well, is that true? It is an older area. They're like, no, it's not true. I'm like, because in my experience, like all the investors I know, they're going to renovate the front house and then build the ADU, and which means they're probably going to install newer fixtures. Things are going to be more energy efficient. So if anything, it would make it less, I don't know, less needed. And what was the other big one that they were complaining about? Because in Riverside, it's not about parking. It was about utilities and but the NIMBYs are loud. They definitely cause some problems. Do you have problems with neighbors at all?
I haven't so far. I think the thing to say to that is just when you're building the ADU, you have to have certain upgrades anyway. You have to have electrical panel upgrade on the main house. You have to have your sewer line tied in. They're not going to tie it in if the main sewer line is too small to begin with. So it's all connected anyway. So if you're upgrading the main house, you just have to make sure you're doing the right upgrades for the ADU at the same time. Maybe leave that trench open so you can tie in the ADU stuff to the main house. So
Okay. And it doesn't impact tenants, and that's really good to hear. And are they staying a long time? Has there been any problems with tenant turnover?
not in the main house. Yeah, I had to get a little creative in the beginning with how I actually got these ADUs built, because that was a bit of a challenge. Like some of these houses were existing already and already rented. So I thought, well, how am I going to get this tenant to give up half of their backyard so I can put an ADU back there? So one by one, you just sort of think about, okay, what could be in it for them? So this couple that I just rented to, this house, I had 27 applications. I said I would actually give them a little bit of a discount while the construction is going on. But I honestly, in hindsight, I don't even think I needed to offer that because there's just such a demand. I mean, it's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot house. There's such a demand for it that I don't think I needed to offer that little discount, but I will to keep my word.
Sean told me once upon a time we were talking about Airbnb, how it actually changed the math on rentals, so it actually increased the pricing of homes. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and perhaps ADU and SB9 in particular is going to continue that trend, and we're going to actually see prices go up. And when they become more popular, when all of a sudden R1 lots are, start to densify a little bit, the numbers just changed when you have 2 houses on there.
That's a good point. Maybe that's more the case in places like Big Bear, like Arrowhead, where, hopefully Airbnb isn't going away anytime soon and people want that second vacation home for themselves. I think the prices would have just gone up anyway because your interest rates are just still so low and there's still low inventory.
Yeah, which I have that conversation so much about people thinking that the market is going to drop. I'm like, you can sit on the sidelines if you want. I just don't see why that would happen. There's so many things that are not in play that were in play the last cycle. The crazy financing, the builders are building very differently. We don't have a glut of inventory. We took a decade off of building anyway, and all of a sudden you've got millennials getting off the couch and they're just coming into the market in droves, and they want single family, they want more space, they're tired of living in apartments. So the dynamics are just so different. Are you thinking something similar? Or
yeah, I mean, even as a real estate investor, the way I look at it is, okay, I'm still buying a couple rentals to hold. Not that I really want too many more rentals, but it's like I can still get the loans. So the last ones I just got refinanced at 3.625 or something, I think my interest rate was. So if you're going to hold a property for 10 years or more anyway, who cares really?
Yeah.
And generally as a real estate investor, you're buying with a bit of equity, especially if it's a fixer, you're buying with a lot of equity. You have to dump more money into it, but like I got one recently, I only needed to just do basic upgrades to it. So I could get the thing financed right from the get-go with a good loan. And yeah, I'll have to come out of pocket $100,000 or a bit less for the garage conversion, but I'll get 2,000 up to 2,000 a month off that, and I'll have that $100,000 back in no time. So,
yeah,
and I'm going to hold that for 10 plus years. So it doesn't matter really what the value is doing to me. If it's a longer term play.
Have you had this experience where people are moving out and all of a sudden you want everybody to move out this year because rent increases?
Well, actually, I'm pretty good at increasing rent every year, just a little bit. I mean,
you're in LA, you have to.
Well, I have to. Yeah,
or else you get stuck.
Yeah. I don't want to be greedy, but at the same time, I want to get them used to a rent increase every year. Then they expect something. Then I don't feel bad, if I increase it a big chunk in 3 years. I'd rather do a little bit every year. when
Yeah,
they were
that's
used to be.
smart. I've done that. I've played that very wrong. I have my
You're too
recent story.
nice.
I am way too nice. And I talked to my Cantus about this. He's like, don't feel bad. Because I just really want people to stay there thinking, I just didn't realize how far I was off. Even 5 years, if you haven't been very good about raising rents, it's a very different 5 years. Who knew? I was the $1,000
Even
off.
even $30 or $50, some small amount, then they get used to it.
Yeah. Something to learn. Has COVID changed how tenants feel about your properties, or 80 with ADUs? Doesn't matter.
No, I don't think COVID's really changed too much. Except like I mentioned, the backyard space. I have that with all my properties. And going forward, I'm trying to be even more thoughtful with that. Just because I can stick 4 units on a 5,000 square foot lot doesn't mean I will. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to pencil, for one thing. I'm starting to figure out. But nothing is you still you shouldn't build every last square foot out, which I don't think you could do anyway. You've got to have some yard space. But for it to be thoughtful space in on that property that people can just have a seat outside, I think that's really important. I think if we've learned anything the last couple of years, it's probably that.
Joey, you have
Okay,
a
so
question?
yeah, so hear me out. If you're gonna do 3 or 4 in the back, theme, let's make it the Shire back there, from the Hobbit, or
Oh,
let's make
God.
it Tatooine, like make them feel like they're living somewhere, from a movie theater or something. I don't know.
I know that works for Airbnb. The whole experience thing is like the number one category of growing and price increases, but I don't know if rentals count like that, but is a funny idea.
A serious question though. So I don't know how familiar you are with the DCLA guys. They, we visited a couple of their builds, and some of their ADUs, they go like tri-level. Well, they'll put, they'll almost keep the garage, put the living space right above it, the bedrooms right above that, and then even a rooftop, area. Like how high are you going? What goes into the thought process, and what type of ADU that you build?
I think that could really work for LA properties. For like I've got mine in Long Beach, Lakewood, Garden Grove, Stanton, Bellflower, like those areas. So it's more just residential, boring neighborhoods. But my thought is it's more of like a condo alternative. So instead of somebody being in an apartment building or a condo building, they are still in a small space, but it's like a little mini apartment condo space. So you've got the main house. I usually reserve the driveway for use of the parking for the main house tenants. But then maybe you've converted a garage and you have another studio sized ADU or JDU or something. So trying to build more of maybe a little mini community feel, like not a tiny home community, but maybe something like that is sort of how I envision if you're going to do more than 2 units.
And is there a premium to, let's say, if you get a garage that actually accesses to an alley, and they don't even have to go through the front? Is that better? Like, are you targeting that? Is that something you look at?
It just depends, because if you can have an off alley or off street parking, then the alley is useful because they can come down the alley and pull into their parking space and get out and walk 2 steps to their ADU. But if you don't really have that off street parking, then who cares? The car's going to end up on the street anyway.
I remember I was going to tell you before, when I'm teaching and you're trying to butt up against a lot of the NIMBYism, they're like, oh, it's going to ruin the neighborhood. These landlords are taking over them all. I don't know too many landlords who are going to spend $100,000 to piss off all their neighbors and also to provide a terrible experience for a tenant who is going to create a lot of turnover. I just don't know who'd be stupid enough to do that. So I'm glad that you said that design matters to you, because it's a big deal and people keep talking about it. And in this particular area where there was a lot of NIMBYism, one by a realtor, by the way, who is causing problems. I'm all, you guys, there's these detached garages that haven't been touched in 100 years. These are not precious little gems. They're terrible. This will look nicer. Like, please, if anything, I told the city I would love to see them incentivize investors by creating. Riverside used to have a whole house rehab program where the more energy efficiency and the more upgrades you did to a property, the more rebate you would get back. I'm like, do it for the primary and the ADU at the same time and improve the stock of the property simultaneously. That would be amazing.
Mhm.
But I think investors really have to get a little bit more at the ground level, which is hard. I mean, you mentioned like 5 different cities that you're building these in. You can't be everywhere all at once, but we do have to be prepared to have sensible, data-driven responses to NIMBYism because it's crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, those are all good points. And yeah, maybe it would impact the street a little bit if there's 1 or 2 extra cars out there all the time. But other than that, I think it's a great thing for tenants. Well, here's something I did just this week to be considerate of everybody. So I got a property and I thought, okay, instead of just like rushing out and building an ADU and a JDU and a second unit, let me just put a little team together. So I got my architect over there, my contractor, another investor who's pretty savvy when it comes to building and design, a realtor I've worked with for a long time, and a couple who were actually had searched for a long time in this particular city for a rental unit. So I had I didn't get any neighbors, so maybe I should have thought of that. But I thought, okay, I have a little small team. Let's brainstorm what makes sense to do back here. Let's just not slap together. Let's put some thought into it. So that's what I'm trying to do going forward if I'm going to build more of these.
Yeah, especially with SP9, and you're talking about maybe installing 4 units. That's a big difference in a current R1 lot. That is a big change, and that can change parking and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
That'll be very interesting because I'm sure the NIMBYs
Yeah,
will pop
and
up.
I was getting it to pencil too. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other thing. It's like if you're going to build 3 more units, but then your value is only a certain amount, why not just go down the street and buy a 4-plex? It's already built, save yourself the hassle, and it's kind of,
It
same
sounds like
deal.
you're leaning more towards JDU because of the cost to rent comparison. Is that fair to say?
Well, you could still, so you can have ADUs and second unit up to 1,200 square feet
Yeah.
in some cities. And a junior ADU can only be up to 500 square feet, and it's got to be already existing part of the house. So I probably wouldn't do JDU because even if you do JDU, you're supposed to live there. And I'm already, I'm tired of moving.
Have you done any other than California, like in any other states? Are you investing in any other states? Just California?
No,
we get asked that, Aaron.
Yeah,
Aaron, like as we're building in Florida, like, hey, can we put some ADUs out there?
Yeah, it's not a thing in Florida right now, but I have seen it in Portland, Maine. I think it was Portland, Maine. So I saw some talk about ADUs on the East Coast. Of course, Oregon and Washington have been talking about it. It's not a unique experience. We need more housing stock, and this is a very creative way to get around it. I mean, the land costs and the government costs are just insane. Obviously, in California, if you're building below 750 square feet, it also comes with a lot less government impact fees. They're not supposed to charge you. And I really like, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I really like ADU laws because there's a 60-day timeline. If you submit a complete application, the city is only supposed to have 60 days to turn that around. In theory.
In theory.
In theory. Have you experienced that?
Well, in theory, yeah. So I think a better key is to actually figure out who's sort of the pro investor planners out there. Because I mean, city of Los Angeles is just a nightmare. You just spin your wheels trying to figure out who you're supposed to be dealing with. And, but if you can get like some of the smaller cities, I think there could be a benefit to working with them because you get to know the planner, you get to know the guy or girl approving these ADUs, and they can move along a little faster. So not that you have the luxury to be able to do that with every city, or that you end up getting a house that you want to build an ADU in. But sometimes it's more streamlined. And then, COVID, they put everything online to try to speed things up, and it actually slowed everything down even more. So it is what it is. If you want to build in California and do anything here, you just have to know there's just going to be frustrations when it comes to city stuff.
Now, I remember, I know what the last conversation I had on the Data Driven podcast, the Property Radar, we specifically talked about your LA project. And the last time we interviewed you on the Norris Group was back in 2019. And I forget if it came up, but you had a project in LA where you're trying to do a lot split. Can you update us on that project?
Yeah, there's no update there, Aaron.
Oh, no,
There's
really?
no update.
Oh,
There's no update. So
that's-
so I've had plans submitted since November 2018.
Stop.
2018. And the first part of that, and I'm sure I did many things wrong, so I've learned sort of how to navigate a little better. But first part of that was dealing with HPAWs. So if you've ever dealt with the historical, I mean, and I get it. Like, I get dealing with them because they do try to, keep the integrity of some of these houses. So I get it. But it's just the process is just so slow and inefficient that there's not a fast way of going about it.
So what have you done with that project? I mean, so it's
So
a single family
nothing.
house on, how big is the lot then?
Well, the lot, so I was splitting that before SB9 existed. So I already had that underway, and it's over 13,000 square feet, and it met the width and the length. So everything, I felt there was I would buy the property because there's a good chance I could get it done, and I will. But, building and splitting the lots and street lights, apparently I have to put in, and rain barrels galore. Like, I don't even know where I'm going to put all these rain barrels that they want.
Rain barrels? They want rain barrels?
Yes. There's just all these things. So anyway, it's due to partly my inexperience, but we'll get to the finish line. And it's funny because actually I only have, so after I split the lot, I'll have one main house and one ADU. And now I'm thinking, well, should I go back to the drawing board? Because technically I could split that again and have 4 more units. But anyway, I'm not sure what to do. I think I'll just keep going to the finish line. And
all right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Norris Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. Please be sure to tune in next week and catch part 2 of our interview with real estate investor Kristi Cirtwill. Thank you.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.